Welcome to the Seasons of Joy podcast. My name is Jill Pack, and this is episode number 197 entitled The Reason Any of This Works. I want to start today a little differently. No warm-up, no story to ease in, just what I actually believe. I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. I believe he lived. I believe he suffered in a garden and felt every single thing I have ever felt. Every moment of inadequacy, every middle of the night fear, every time I have failed the people I love most, I believe he felt it all, willingly, so that I would never have to carry it alone. I believe he died, and I believe he rose. And I believe that because he rose, something is available to me and to you that is not available any other way. Easter is in just a couple of days, and I want to say this plainly. I am a life and relationship coach. I have a framework I teach. I have tools that help women navigate conflict, regulate their nervous systems, repair relationships, and find their way back to themselves. And these tools work. I've watched them work over and over again. I believe in them. But if you ask me to tell you the truth, the whole truth about why any of it actually works in my life and in the lives of the women I coach, it's him. It's always been him. I became a life coach in my 50s. After nearly 3 decades of raising my children, pouring myself into my family, and, if I'm being completely honest, losing track of who I was in the process. But I want to back up even further than that, because I think what I've learned about grace didn't start in my 50s. It started much earlier. I just didn't have the words for it yet. When I was young, a teenager, a young adult finding my footing, the question underneath everything was, who am I? Identity, worth, whether I was enough, whether I belonged. I think most of us spend those years building a self, and we don't always do it consciously. We absorb messages from the world around us about what makes a person valuable, and we build accordingly. For me, a lot of those messages said, be good enough, be useful enough, be needed enough, and then you'll be worthy of love. That's not the gospel, but it can feel like it when you're young and you're figuring things out. And then came marriage and family, the beautiful, overwhelming, identity-shifting season of being someone's wife and someone's mother. And I want to be careful here because I love my family with my whole heart and soul. But I also want to be honest. I spent a lot of that season gripping, holding on, trying to control outcomes for the people I loved the most because I thought that was what love required. The Lord was patient with me about this for a long time, and then gently and repeatedly, he began to teach me about allowing, about the difference between loving someone and managing them, and letting go, not because I stopped caring, but because real love has to leave room for agency, for the other person's journey, for God to be God in their lives. Even when I disagreed with how he was doing it, this is still some of the hardest work I have ever done. And then the empty nest, the season I did not see coming in the way it actually arrived, when the children I had organized my entire identity around began to live their own lives, and some of those lives looked different than I had hoped. I had to decide what kind of love I was actually capable of. Could I love without conditions? Could I stay connected without controlling? Could I love the way the Savior loves, which is to say, completely, without requiring the other person to be different first? I'm still learning. I want to be honest about that, but it's Easter, and this season pulls me back to what's possible. Because if he can love me, who is still figuring it out, still getting it wrong sometimes, then maybe I can learn to love that way too. I grew up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I've heard the Easter story hundreds of times, and there have been seasons of my life when it was just that, a story. I believed in my head, but I hadn't yet felt it inside. The resurrection was true, I thought, but it was a fact about the past, not a lived reality in my present. What changed that for me was the inner work. When I started learning how to actually see myself, not the performance of myself, but what was really happening underneath it all, I started to feel seen by him in a way I hadn't before. It was like learning his language, like I'd been standing in front of a door for years that I didn't know how to open. And the self-awareness work handed me the key. When I started learning how to accept where I actually was, instead of always striving to be further along, I started to feel his acceptance in a way that wasn't abstract anymore. It became real. When I started learning how to speak to myself with compassion instead of that constant criticism, I started to understand in my soul what it meant that he didn't come to condemn the world. He came to save it. He came for me, for the version of me that is still a mess, still a work in progress. And when I started learning to trust myself, my intuition, my knowing, the still small voice that I had forgotten how to hear, I started to trust that he trusted me too. That the reason I'm here, living this life, navigating these relationships, doing this work, is because he believed that I could. The tools didn't create those experiences. He did. The tools just helped me get quiet enough to receive them. Grace and joy come from the same source. I think about that a lot because the word I use in almost everything I do is joy, seasons of joy. Joy is in the name of this podcast, and I chose that word deliberately on purpose. Not because I think life is easy or that we're supposed to feel happy all the time, but because I believe joy is available even in the hardest seasons. And joy in this framework is the fruit of grace, which means joy is not something I can produce on my own. It's not a feeling I generate through enough positive thinking or self-discipline or good habits. It's what flows into me when I stop blocking grace. And I block grace, and I've learned this the hard way. When I'm not willing to see myself clearly, when I reject where I am, when I berate myself for being human, and when I override my own knowing to keep everyone around me comfortable. The inner work I teach is at its heart a practice of getting out of the way, of becoming a person who can actually receive what is already being offered. Because grace is not waiting for me to deserve it, and Easter is the proof of that. He didn't rise after we got our act together. He rose in the middle of our mess, our fear, our hiding, our doubt. He rose for the version of us that still doesn't fully believe he can. After we can begin to receive grace for ourselves, we can start to give it away. I don't think that's an accident. I think that's the whole divine design. The commandment is love thy neighbor as thyself. Not instead of yourself, not more than yourself, as yourself, which means that the quality of love we extend to ourselves sets the ceiling for the love we can offer to others. When I was at war with myself, criticizing myself, rejecting where I was, refusing to trust my own knowing, I was not able to see other people clearly either. I was too defended, too reactive, too busy managing my own chaos to have anything generous left for the people around me. But when I began to see myself the way he sees me, with honesty, without cruelty, I started to see my husband that way too, my children, the people I was in conflict with. I started to notice that the same grace I was learning to receive was the grace being asked of me in my hardest relationships. This is why I call what I do conflict transformation, not conflict resolution, because resolution implies that we just tie it all neatly up in a bow and we move on. Transformation means something in us actually changes. And in my experience, that transformation always flows in the same direction, inward first, then outward. When I know I'm seen by my Savior, I can look at a person across from me, even the one who has hurt me, and ask, what does he see in them? When I know I'm accepted by him, I can offer something other than conditions to the people I love most. When I extend compassion to myself for being human, I create more capacity to extend it to someone else who is also just human, trying, struggling, not all the way there yet. And when I trust myself, I stop needing the people around me to behave in a certain way in order for me to feel okay. I can be steady. I can be present. I can be the person in the room who isn't escalating because I'm regulated and grounded and held. That is what loving like the Savior looks like in practice. I think. Not a feeling we perform, not patience we clench our fists to maintain, but a genuine overflow of what we've already received. You cannot give what you have not been given. But once you've received it, once grace is real to you, not just true, it changes how you walk into a room, how you listen, how you respond when someone disappoints you, how you love the people whose choices you cannot control. Easter makes this possible because he didn't just model this love, he made it available. His grace isn't just something we admire from a distance. It's something we can actually carry into our hardest moments and our most broken relationships. That is why I do this work. If you are someone who believes in Jesus Christ, I want to offer you this, and I want to offer it to wherever you are right now in your season of life. If you are young, still figuring out who you are, you don't have to build your identity from what the world tells you're worth. There is one who already knows exactly who you are, and he is not waiting for you to prove it. If you are in the thick of marriage and family, still learning to love without gripping, still figuring out what it means to allow, you are not failing. You're in the middle of one of the most demanding discipleship schools there is, and he is in it with you. You are not alone. And if you are in the empty nest, loving people you cannot control, staying connected to people whose choices break your heart, you are practicing the most Christ-like love there is. And he sees it. He honors it. He does it too. In every season, the invitation is the same. Learning to see yourself the way he sees you. That's discipleship. Learning to accept yourself in a way he accepts you. That is receiving grace. Learning to speak to yourself the way he speaks to you. That is living the second great commandment. Love thy neighbor as thyself. As thyself. Learning to trust yourself the way he trusts you. That is faith in a God who does not make mistakes when he sends people to earth. This is the Easter season, and I invite you to sit with this question. What would change if you actually believed, not just in your head, but in your body, in your heart, in your soul, that he rose for you, the specific, complicated, still figuring it out version of you, not the you that you're trying to become, you, now, today, because that's who he rose for. That's the whole point. I am a coach and I love what I do. I love the tools and the frameworks and the sacred work of sitting with a woman while she finds her way back to herself. But I need you to know that none of it, not one bit of it, means what it means to me without him. He is the reason I believe people can change. He is the reason I believe in the possibility of repair, of reconciliation, of a relationship that felt impossible becoming something beautiful. He is the reason I believe that joy is not naive, that it is in fact the most radical and well-grounded response to this life that we are living that exists. Happy Easter, my friend. He is risen. And because he is, so are you.